The cleaner went to take out the trash, but inside the bag she found something frightening. Jessica Morgan had always been a careful and observant person. At 28, she had worked as a cleaner at the Thornton family home for almost 5 years and had never found anything more than unimportant administrative papers in the trash. On that Thursday morning, as she carried the heavy black bag to the street bin, she felt something tearing at the bottom. Yellowed papers scattered across the sidewalk, and as she bent down to pick them up, her eyes widened in surprise. The letterhead of the first document caught her attention immediately. St. Luke's Maternity Hospital, birth certificate, female baby. The name written was Emily Thornton, the 15-year-old daughter of her employer, Mrs. Catherine. But something was completely wrong. Jessica looked around, checking if anyone was watching her, and quickly gathered all the papers. Her hands trembled as she read the documents more carefully. The birth date was correct, March 15, 2009. The hospital also matched, but the blood type recorded was AB negative, something she knew was impossible since both Catherine and her husband David had type O positive. She had heard the family comment about it during Emily's medical checkup the previous year. The strangeness didn't stop there. The recorded time of birth was 11:47 p.m., but she clearly remembered Catherine saying that Emily had been born exactly at midnight because it was a very special date for the family. Furthermore, there was other medical information that didn't make sense with what she knew about Emily's birth. Jessica put the papers in her bag, feeling her heart race. It wasn't in her nature to meddle in the Thornton family's affairs, but those inconsistencies left her extremely unsettled. She had a very strong sense of justice, inherited from her mother, Mrs. Margaret, who always taught her that the truth must come to light no matter how much it hurts. For the rest of that morning, Jessica couldn't concentrate on her tasks. She vacuumed the living room rug mechanically, while her mind raced trying to understand what she had discovered. Catherine had always been a fair and caring employer to her, treating her almost like part of the family. The idea that there could be some dark secret involving Emily left her torn between loyalty to the family and the need to uncover the truth. Emily arrived from school in the early afternoon, as she always did on Thursdays when she got out early. She was a sweet girl with curly brown hair and light brown eyes, always helpful and polite with Jessica. Watching her more closely that day, Jessica noticed something she had never noticed before. Emily really didn't look much like either parent. Catherine had straight blonde hair, blue eyes, and delicate features. David was dark-haired with dark hair and dark brown eyes. Emily, on the other hand, had a unique combination that didn't seem to fit completely with either of them. Her hair was more frizzy than curly, her skin had a slightly darker tone, and her facial features had a different harmony. "Aunt Jessica, are you okay?" asked Emily, using the affectionate nickname she always used to refer to the cleaner. Jessica forced a smile. "Of course, dear. I'm just a little tired today." "Isn't my mom home yet?" Emily looked around the room. "No, she said she was going to the bank and then doing some shopping. She should be back in an hour or two." Emily nodded and went up to her room. Jessica watched the girl climb the stairs, noticing how graceful her movements were, almost like a natural dancer. Catherine always commented that she didn't know where Emily had inherited that gracefulness from, since neither she nor David had any talent for dance. When Catherine arrived home later, Jessica was finishing cleaning the kitchen. The lady of the house entered carrying several shopping bags, with her usual hurried and efficient manner. "Good afternoon, Jessica. How was your day?" Catherine smiled, but Jessica noticed there was something tense in her expression. "Everything was quiet, Mrs. Catherine. Emily came home from school a little while ago and is in her room." Catherine merely nodded and began putting away the groceries. Jessica discreetly observed her behavior, looking for signs that something might be wrong. Catherine seemed more nervous than usual, constantly checking her phone and sighing deeply several times. "Mrs. Catherine, may I ask a question?" Jessica gathered her courage. "Of course, dear. What is it?" "Do you remember any special detail about Emily's birth? Any complication or something different that happened?" Catherine stopped putting away the groceries and stared at Jessica. For a moment, her face visibly paled. "Why are you asking that?" Her voice came out louder than normal. I'm sorry if it was an inappropriate question. It's just that yesterday I was talking to my neighbor, who also has a daughter Emily's age, and she mentioned some complications she had during childbirth. I got curious." Catherine relaxed a little, but Jessica noticed her hands were still trembling slightly. "Emily's birth was quiet. Nothing special happened." Catherine looked away. "Why don't you finish up for today? It's almost 5 o'clock. Jessica felt that Catherine was hiding something but didn't press. She said goodbye and left the house with more questions than answers. On her way back to her own home in the neighboring district, she couldn't stop thinking about the documents she found and Catherine's strange reaction. That night, in her small house that she shared with her mother, Jessica spread the papers out on the kitchen table. Mrs. Margaret, a 62-year-old woman with graying hair and keen eyes, watched her daughter with curiosity. "What are these papers, my dear?" Jessica explained the whole situation to her mother, from discovering the documents to the strange conversation with Catherine. Mrs. Margaret listened attentively, asking pointed questions and carefully analyzing the papers. "This is very strange, Jessica. Are you sure about the family's blood type?" "Absolutely. I clearly remember Mrs. Catherine mentioning at Emily's doctor's appointment that they all had type O positive and that it made things easier in an emergency." Mrs. Margaret shook her head thoughtfully. "You know, dear, I worked at the city hospital for over 20 years before I retired. I saw many strange situations, but this one worries me." "What do you think could have happened?" "There are a few possibilities. It could be a documentation error. It could be that someone falsified documents for some reason, or—" She hesitated. "Or what, Mum?" "Or there could have been a baby switch at the hospital." Jessica felt her blood run cold. The possibility was terrifying, and at the same time explained all the inconsistencies she had observed. But is that possible? How could something like that happen? Unfortunately, yes. It's rare, but it happens. Especially in hospitals with many simultaneous births, or when there are problems with the baby identification system. Mrs. Margaret held her daughter's hand. "Jessica, if this is true, you are dealing with a very delicate situation. 2 families could have been affected." Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out, now continuing. That night, Jessica could hardly sleep. Her mind created increasingly complex scenarios about what might have happened 15 years ago at St. Luke's Maternity Hospital. If there really had been a baby switch, it meant that Emily was not the biological daughter of Catherine and David, and that somewhere there was another family raising the true daughter of the Thorntons. On Friday morning, Jessica arrived at the Thornton house earlier than usual. She wanted to observe the family dynamics more closely, looking for clues that could confirm or dismiss her suspicions. Catherine was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when she arrived. "Good morning, Jessica. Are you all right? You look tired." "Good morning, Mrs. Catherine. I slept poorly, but I'm fine." David came down for coffee before going to work. He was a tall man with dark hair already showing some grey at 45 and a calm way of speaking. Jessica watched him interact with Catherine and then with Emily when she came down for breakfast. The girl wore a navy blue school uniform, her hair in a ponytail that highlighted her unique features even more. Jessica noticed how Emily had a particular way of smiling, with a dimple on the right side that didn't appear in either parent. Her eyes, although brown like David's, had an almond shape that contrasted with both parents' round eyes. "Dad, can you pick me up from school today? I have volleyball practice until late," asked Emily. "Of course, sweetie. What time does it end?" "At 6. Jessica noticed how David called Emily sweetie with genuine affection, but she also noticed that he watched her with an expression she couldn't completely define. There was love there, that was obvious, but there was also something more, a kind of curiosity or silent questioning. After David and Emily left, Catherine stayed in the kitchen longer than usual, tidying and retidying things that were already organized. Jessica took the opportunity to start a casual conversation. "Emily is looking more and more like you, Mrs. Catherine." Catherine abruptly stopped what she was doing. "You think so? I always thought she took more after her father. Yeah, maybe. Sometimes it's hard to see those resemblances when you live with the person every day. Yes, that's true. Catherine seemed uncomfortable with the subject. Jessica decided to risk a little more. Do you remember other babies who were born on the same day as Emily, at the same hospital? This time Catherine dropped the cup she was holding. The sound of glass shattering on the floor echoed through the silent kitchen. Sorry, I'm clumsy today. Catherine quickly bent down to pick up the shards, but her hands were visibly trembling. Let me clean that up, Mrs. Catherine. You might hurt yourself. As Jessica swept up the shards, she watched Catherine lean on the kitchen counter, breathing deeply as if trying to calm herself. Mrs. Catherine, are you feeling unwell? No, it's just that question reminded me of difficult things from that time. What kind of things? Catherine stared at Jessica for a long moment, as if weighing how much she could trust her. Jessica, can I trust you? Of course, Mrs. Catherine. Always. Catherine sighed deeply. Emily's birth wasn't as simple as I've always told. There were complications. Jessica felt her heart race. What kind of complications? I had a very long labor, over 18 hours. When we got to the hospital, there were many women giving birth at the same time. It was a chaotic night. Catherine paused as if deciding whether to continue. And what happened? The nurses were overwhelmed. There were problems with the electricity, and for a few hours the baby identification system didn't work properly. Catherine began to cry silently. Jessica approached and held Catherine's hand. Go on, Mrs. Catherine. When they brought Emily to me a few hours after the delivery, I had a strange feeling. She seemed different than I expected, but the doctors said it was normal, that babies change a lot in the first hours of life. Did you ever question it? I did, yes, several times. But everyone told me it was all in my head, that I was tired and confused because of the long labor. Catherine wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Over time, I ended up accepting it and convincing myself it really was my paranoia. Jessica processed each word carefully. Catherine's story confirmed her suspicions, but it also showed that Catherine herself had doubts about the situation. Mrs. Catherine, what if your suspicions were right? Catherine looked at Jessica with an expression of pure terror. Don't say that, please, don't say that. But have you ever considered that possibility? Every day for the last 15 years. The confession came out as a desperate whisper. The silence that followed was heavy and charged with emotion. Jessica understood that Catherine had lived with this torturous doubt for years, but had chosen silence out of fear of the consequences. Mrs. Catherine, I need to tell you something. Jessica went to get her purse and took out the documents she had found in the trash. Carefully, she explained how she discovered them and all the inconsistencies she had noticed. Catherine looked at the papers with an expression of recognition and despair. I knew I had kept those documents. I thought I had thrown them away years ago, but... She stopped, covering her face with her hands. Did you keep these papers on purpose? Yes, as proof, in case I ever had the courage to investigate the truth. And why did you decide to throw them away now? Catherine took a deep breath before answering. Because Emily is growing up, asking questions about our family, our history. She has mentioned a few times that she doesn't feel she looks like us. I'm afraid she might start suspecting something herself. Jessica understood Catherine's dilemma. The woman had lived 15 years loving and raising a daughter who might not be biologically hers, while at the same time denying herself the possibility of knowing her true biological daughter. What do you intend to do now? I don't know. I'm afraid of discovering the truth and losing Emily. She is everything to me, Jessica. She's my daughter, regardless of any blood test. But what about the other family? If there really was a switch, they also deserve to know the truth. Catherine began to cry more intensely. I know. That's what eats away at me inside every day. I know there might be another mother somewhere who lost her daughter because of a medical error and who never knew about it. Jessica hugged Catherine, feeling the weight of the responsibility they now shared. The discovery in the trash had opened a Pandora's box that could change the lives of two families forever. Mrs. Catherine, do you remember anything specific about that night at the hospital? Any detail that could help identify the other family affected? Catherine pulled away from the hug and dried her tears. I remember there was a woman my age who gave birth almost at the same time as me. She was alone with no companion and seemed very nervous. Did you ever speak to her? Just a few words. She mentioned it was her first child and that the father couldn't be there because he was traveling for work. Catherine paused to think. Oh, and she had a different accent. She wasn't from around here. Would you know how to find her today? I don't know. I never saw her again after that night. Jessica spent the rest of the day thinking about how she could help resolve the situation. She knew Catherine was paralyzed by fear, but she also understood that the truth needed to be discovered, both for the Thornton family and for the other family that might be involved. That afternoon, when Emily returned from school, Jessica observed her mannerisms and physical characteristics even more closely. The girl had a particular way of tilting her head when she was thinking, a graceful gesture when she touched her hair, and a musical laugh that didn't really resemble her parents. Aunt Jessica, can I ask a strange question? Emily sat at the kitchen table where Jessica was preparing a snack for her. Of course, dear. You can ask anything. Do you think I look like my parents? The question caught Jessica off guard. Why are you asking that? I don't know. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I have the feeling that I don't look like anyone in my family. At school, all my friends have obvious traits that came from their parents, but I feel like I'm different. Jessica chose her words carefully. Sometimes genetic traits can skip generations or combine in unexpected ways. Yeah, maybe, but it's not just the physical appearance. Sometimes I feel like my tastes, my personality, even my way of seeing the world are different from my parents. They're amazing people, don't get me wrong, but... Emily hesitated. But what? But sometimes I feel like there's a part of me they don't fully understand, as if there's a piece of my identity that's missing. Jessica felt her heart tighten. Emily's intuition was hauntingly sharp, and her words confirmed that she too felt something didn't quite fit in her family story. Emily, have you talked to your parents about these feelings? I've tried a few times, but they get uncomfortable, especially my mum. She quickly changes the subject whenever I ask that kind of question. At that moment, Catherine entered the kitchen and immediately noticed the tension in the air. What are you two talking about? Nothing much, Mum. Just teenage talk. Emily smiled, but Jessica noticed it was a forced smile. Catherine looked at Jessica with a questioning expression. Jessica made a discreet sign to indicate they would talk later. When Emily went up to her room to study, Catherine approached Jessica. What was she asking? Jessica faithfully recounted the conversation. Catherine was visibly shaken. She's starting to suspect. I always knew this day would come. Mrs. Catherine, perhaps it's time to consider finding out the truth, for her sake and for your own peace of mind. But how? Where do we start? Jessica had been thinking about this all day. First, we could try to get more information about that night at the hospital. Maybe there are still records that could clarify what happened. And then? Then, if we discover there really was a switch, we would have to find the other family involved. Catherine shook her head, clearly frightened by the possibilities. What if they want Emily back? What if I lose my daughter? Mrs. Catherine, Emily is 15. She has her own will and her own feelings. No one can simply tear her away from the life she's built here. But she deserves to know the truth about her origin. What if the truth is worse than living with the doubt? What if the truth brings peace and closure to everyone involved? That night, Catherine called David and asked him to come home early. When he arrived, Catherine was visibly nervous, pacing the living room while Jessica finished her daily tasks. Did something happen? David asked, worried. I need to talk to you about something very serious. Catherine looked at Jessica. Jessica, can you stay? You're part of this conversation now. David looked confused, but sat on the sofa, waiting for Catherine to explain. With a trembling voice, Catherine told the whole story, from the initial suspicions at the hospital to the discovery of the documents by Jessica. David listened in silence, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, and then to a kind of relief. Did you always know about this? He asked when Catherine finished. I always suspected, and you? David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Jessica recognized as a sign of stress in him. Catherine, I I always had doubts too, since the very first day. But I thought you would be devastated if I mentioned something like that. You never said anything. How could I? You were so happy, so in love with Emily. I didn't want to destroy that with my suspicions. David held Catherine's hands, but I confess there were times when I could barely stand the uncertainty. Jessica watched the couple with admiration. Even facing this devastating revelation, they supported each other instead of attacking or blaming one another. "What do you think we should do?" asked Catherine. David thought for a long moment. "I think we should find out the truth. For us, for Emily, and for any other family that might be involved. And what if we find out she really isn't our biological daughter? Then we'll find out. But Catherine, Emily will always be our daughter, regardless of any DNA test. We raised her. We love her. She is part of us. That will never change." Jessica felt her eyes well up at the demonstration of unconditional love from Emily's adoptive parents. "Do you want me to help you investigate?" offered Jessica. Catherine and David looked at each other and nodded simultaneously. "Yes, please, we don't even know where to start," replied Catherine. "I have an idea. My mother worked in hospital administration for many years. She can help us understand how to access old records and what kind of information we might find." On Saturday morning, Jessica took Catherine and David to talk with Mrs. Margaret. Jessica's simple but welcoming home contrasted with the luxurious Thornton residence, but Mrs. Margaret received the couple with the same hospitality she offered any visitor. After hearing the whole story, Mrs. Margaret shook her head with a serious expression. "You're dealing with a very delicate situation, but it takes courage to face the truth." "Do you think it's possible to find out what really happened after so long?" asked David. "It is possible, yes. Hospitals are required to keep records for many years. The problem is gaining access to that information, especially considering medical privacy issues." "How could we get legal access to those records?" "There are a few options. You can file a formal request with the hospital, explaining the situation. You could also look for a lawyer specializing in family matters to advise you on your legal rights." Catherine seemed intimidated by the prospect of involving lawyers and legal procedures. "Is there any more discreet way to get this information?" Mrs. Margaret looked thoughtful. "Well, I still have some contacts in the hospital sector. Perhaps I could make a few unofficial calls to see what we can find out." "Would you do that for us?" asked Catherine, hopeful. "Of course, but you need to be prepared for whatever result we find." Over the weekend, while Mrs. Margaret used her contacts to investigate discreetly, Catherine and David spent time observing Emily with a new perspective. Every gesture, every expression, every quirk of the girl was analyzed in the light of the suspicions that were now out in the open. Emily, in turn, seemed to sense that something had changed in the family dynamic. During Sunday lunch, she made an observation that surprised everyone. "You've been acting strange around me since Friday." "Did something happen?" Catherine and David exchanged nervous glances. "Why do you think we're acting strange?" asked David. "I can't explain it well. You keep looking at me differently, as if you're studying something about me. And several times I've caught you whispering and stopping when I got close." Emily's perceptiveness was impressive for a 15-year-old girl. Catherine decided to be partially honest. "Emily, we're going through some family reflections. Adult things we're still trying to understand. It's nothing you did or should worry about." "Do these reflections have to do with me?" "Indirectly, yes. But when we're ready to talk about it, you'll be the first to know. Can you trust us?" Emily nodded, but Jessica could see the girl wasn't completely satisfied with the vague explanation. On Monday morning, Mrs. Margaret called Jessica with important information. "My dear, I managed to speak with a former colleague who still works in the archives at St. Luke's Hospital. She confirmed there was indeed an irregular situation at the maternity ward on the night of March 15, 2009. "What kind of irregular situation?" "There was a partial blackout that affected the newborn identification system for approximately 3 hours. During that period, 5 babies were born almost simultaneously, and for a while they were mixed up in the intensive care room without proper identification." Jessica felt her heart race. "And what else did your friend find out?" "She said there was an internal investigation at the time, but it was hushed up to avoid legal problems for the hospital. Officially, nothing was documented about possible baby switches. But does that mean there really could have been a switch? It means the possibility is very real, and more, she managed to get the names of the other families who had babies that night. Jessica almost dropped the phone. Can she give us those names? She can, but it's risky for her. It would be a violation of the hospital's privacy rules. It would need to be very discreet. Mother, this could change the lives of several families. It's worth the risk. After careful negotiations, Mrs. Margaret's friend agreed to provide a list with the names and addresses of the 5 families who had baby girls on the night in question, including the Thorntons. In return, they promised absolute discretion and that they wouldn't mention how they got the information. When Jessica brought the list to Catherine and David, they studied the names in silence for several minutes. "How are we going to approach these families?" asked Catherine. "We need to be very careful," replied David. "If we just show up saying we think there was a baby switch, they might think we're crazy or scammers." Jessica had an idea. "What if we start by researching these families first, trying to find out what their daughters are like, if there's any obvious physical resemblance to you or to Emily? How would we do that without seeming invasive?" "Well, 3 of these families still live in the city. We could try to casually spot them in public places, see the girls from a distance without approaching them directly." The first family on the list was the Harrisons, who lived in a middle-class neighborhood about 15 minutes from the Thornton house. According to the records, they had a daughter named Olivia. Jessica offered to do some discreet investigation first. The following Saturday, Jessica went to the public park near the Harrisons' address, hoping the family would show up for weekend activities. Her luck was great. After 2 hours of observation, she saw a family that matched the description, a middle-aged couple with a teenage girl. The girl, who must have been Olivia, had blonde hair and blue eyes, characteristics that matched Catherine's perfectly. Moreover, her mannerisms and gestures were surprisingly similar to Emily's mother. Jessica discreetly observed for about an hour, noticing similarities that made her heart race. When she returned home, Jessica immediately called Catherine and David. "You need to see this for yourselves," she said. "Meet me at the park tomorrow." On Sunday, Catherine and David went to the park with Jessica. When they saw Olivia Harrison playing with a dog, both were visibly shocked. The girl was almost a teenage version of Catherine, with facial features that left no doubt about a possible family connection. "My God," whispered Catherine. She looks exactly like me when I was that age." David watched Olivia for several minutes in silence. "And look how she moves her hands when she talks. It's exactly how you do it, Catherine." "Do you think we should approach the family today?" asked Jessica. "No," Catherine replied quickly. "I need to prepare myself psychologically for this, and we need to think very carefully about how we're going to explain the situation." For the rest of the week, Catherine and David exhaustively debated how to approach the Harrison family. They knew the conversation would be one of the most difficult of their lives and could have irreversible consequences for all the families involved. Finally, on Friday, they decided that the best approach would be complete honesty. David called Mr. Harrison, identified himself, and requested a meeting to discuss a very delicate matter related to the birth of both families' daughters. The phone conversation was tense. Mr. Harrison initially seemed suspicious and reluctant, but when David specifically mentioned the date and the hospital where the girls were born, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You have doubts too?" asked Mr. Harrison finally. "Too. My wife and I have always suspected something wasn't right. Our daughter, she's wonderful. We love her unconditionally, but she never looked like us physically or in temperament." David felt a mix of relief and apprehension. "I think we need to talk in person. When could you meet with us?" They scheduled a meeting for Saturday afternoon at the Thornton house. Catherine spent the entire week nervous, obsessively cleaning the house and mentally rehearsing what she would say. Emily noticed her mother's strange behavior, but respected her parents' request not to ask questions until they were ready to explain everything. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On Saturday, the Harrisons arrived promptly at 2 in the afternoon. The couple, Michael and Jennifer Harrison, had a serious but friendly appearance. They did not bring Olivia, as previously agreed. This first meeting would be only between the adults. Catherine served coffee as everyone settled in the living room. The atmosphere was tense, but there was also a sense of expectation, as if everyone was about to discover something that had been bothering them for years. Michael Harrison was the first to speak. "First of all, we want to make it clear that our daughter Olivia is our daughter, regardless of any biological issue. We love her, and she loves us. Any conversation we have here today will not change that." "We feel exactly the same way about our Emily," replied Catherine. "She is our daughter in every way that truly matters." Jennifer Harrison nodded. "Now that that's established, we can be honest with each other. Michael and I always knew something didn't add up about Olivia's birth." "What kind of things?" asked David. "First, physical characteristics. Olivia has blue eyes and blonde hair, while Michael and I have dark hair and brown eyes. The doctors said it could be recessive genetics, but our parents and grandparents didn't have those traits either." Catherine and David exchanged a look. It was exactly the opposite situation from theirs. Michael continued, "Besides, her temperament has always been very different from ours. Olivia is a very energetic, outgoing person who likes outdoor activities. Jennifer and I are more reserved. We prefer quiet activities, reading, classical music." "And how are your daughters in that regard?" asked Jennifer. "Emily is more like you described," answered Catherine. "She loves to read, has very refined musical taste for a teenager, is more introverted and thoughtful." David pulled out a folder with the documents Jessica had found. "We found these papers recently. They show inconsistencies in Emily's medical records that made us question the whole situation." The Harrisons examined the documents carefully. Jennifer began to cry silently. "We have similar documents too," said Michael. "Medical records that don't make sense. Contradictory notes about the time of birth, information about complications we don't remember experiencing." Catherine held Jennifer's hand. "How did you discover these inconsistencies?" 2 years ago, when Olivia needed a blood transfusion after an accident, we discovered her blood type wasn't compatible with what was recorded on her birth certificate. When we questioned the hospital, they said there was a documentation error at the time." "A documentation error or something more?" asked David. Michael took a deep breath. "We started to suspect there was something more. We hired a private investigator to look into that night at the hospital. He discovered the problem with the baby identification system." Catherine was surprised. "You've already investigated the situation?" "We started, but we stopped when we realized that discovering the truth could mean losing our daughter." Jennifer wiped her tears. "You can understand that fear." "Perfectly," replied Catherine. "We've lived with that same fear for 15 years. Jessica, who had remained silent until then, decided to intervene. "May I make an observation?" Everyone turned to her. "You two couples have spent 15 years loving and raising daughters who may not be biologically yours, but who have become your daughters in every other way. If there really was a switch, that doesn't diminish the love you feel for them, nor the love they feel for you." "That's true," agreed Michael. "But what if the girls want to meet their biological families? What if they feel betrayed for not knowing the truth?" David thought carefully before answering. "I think they deserve to know the truth and have the option to choose how they want to handle that information." "Do you think we should talk to them?" asked Jennifer. Catherine hesitated. "Honestly, I'm afraid. Emily has already made comments about not feeling connected to us in the way she expected. If she finds out we're really not her biological parents, she might want to leave. Or she might be relieved to finally understand why she always felt different," suggested Jessica. "And Olivia might feel the same." Michael shook his head. "My daughter has always commented that she feels like a fish out of water in our family. She loves extreme sports, adventure, outdoor activities. Jennifer and I are even afraid of heights." "Emily is the opposite," said David. "She prefers to stay home reading, listening to music, doing artistic activities. Sometimes we feel guilty for not being able to connect with her interests." Jennifer had an idea. "What if we arranged a casual meeting between the families? Without revealing our suspicion initially, just to see how the girls react to each other. How would we do that?" We can say we met you through mutual friends and suggest a barbecue or family lunch. Let them get to know each other naturally and observe the interaction. Catherine liked the idea. That would give us a chance to see how they relate, and also how each one interacts with the other family. They agreed to organize a lunch the following Sunday at the Harrison apartment, which had a gourmet space suitable for a family gathering. Catherine and David returned home with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. That night, Catherine explained to Emily that they had met a nice family and would like to introduce her to them. They have a daughter your age, named Olivia. We think you might get along. Emily seemed a little surprised by the invitation, but agreed. Okay, how long have you known this family? Not very long. We met through David at work. It was a half-truth, but Catherine didn't feel ready to explain the whole situation yet. On Sunday, the Thornton family arrived at the Harrison apartment at 11:30 in the morning. The apartment was decorated elegantly but warmly, with many plants and photographs of the family's travels. When the door opened, Emily and Olivia came face to face for the first time. There was a moment of silence as the two girls observed each other. Catherine watched closely, looking for signs of recognition or special connection. "Hi, I'm Emily," said the girl, extending her hand. "Olivia," replied the other, shaking the offered hand. During the first few minutes, the girls seemed a little shy but soon began talking naturally. Catherine noticed how Emily seemed more relaxed and at ease in the Harrisons' home than she usually was in new environments. Olivia, in turn, immediately connected with Catherine, asking about her profession, her hobbies, and showing genuine interest in topics that Emily usually considered boring. During lunch, the coincidences multiplied impressively. Emily and Jennifer discovered they both loved the same type of literature, had nearly identical musical tastes, and shared similar opinions on art and philosophy. Michael and Emily hit it off immediately, discussing history books and documentaries they watched. Olivia, on the other hand, got excited when David mentioned he had done rock climbing in his youth. She bombarded him with questions about extreme sports and outdoor adventures. Catherine was impressed to see how Olivia had the same energy and enthusiasm she had had as a teenager, but had lost over the years. After lunch, while the adults talked in the living room, the girls went to Olivia's room. From there came sounds of laughter and animated conversation. "They're getting along very well," commented Michael. "It's amazing how quickly they connected," agreed Jennifer. "And did you notice the similarities?" Catherine nodded. "It's hard to ignore. Emily is acting in a way I've never seen before. She seems at home here. Olivia, too. She's usually shy with adults she doesn't know, but with you she's completely at ease." David watched out the window, lost in thought. "This is confirming our suspicions, isn't it?" "I think so. The question now is, what do we do with this information?" Jessica, who had accompanied the Thornton family as a family friend, made a suggestion. "Why don't we let them spend more time together first? Maybe arrange a few more meetings before revealing anything." "That's a good idea," agreed Michael. "That way we can see how their relationship develops naturally." When it was time to leave, the girls asked to exchange phone numbers and meet again soon. "Mum, can we invite Olivia to come over to our house next week?" asked Emily on the way home. "Of course, dear. You two got along well, huh?" "Very well. It's strange, but I feel like I've known her for a long time. We have a lot in common." Catherine and David exchanged meaningful looks. During the following week, Emily and Olivia talked on the phone every day and arranged to meet on Saturday at the Thornton house. Olivia arrived in the mid-afternoon and immediately felt at home in the family environment. Catherine observed how Olivia interacted with the spaces in the house. The girl instinctively went to the corners that Catherine liked the most: the reading chair by the window, the bookshelf, the little corner with plants in the garden. It was as if she knew exactly where the special places in the house were. Emily, in turn, was more animated and talkative than Catherine had seen her in years. The two girls spent hours talking about books, music, and plans for the future. In the late afternoon, when Michael and Jennifer came to pick up Olivia, the four adults had a brief private conversation, while the girls said their goodbyes in the garden. "How are you all feeling about the situation?" asked Catherine. "More and more convinced that our suspicions are correct," replied Jennifer. "Olivia came home last Sunday saying she felt more comfortable with you than she ever has with many people. Emily said the same thing about you, admitted David. Michael looked through the garden windows where the girls were talking animatedly. I think the time has come to tell them the truth. Do you think they're ready? Asked Catherine nervously. I think so. And more importantly, I think they're already starting to suspect something. Olivia asked me some strange questions about our family history this week. Emily, too, confirmed Catherine. She asked if there was any chance she was adopted. Jennifer sighed. Then it's decided. Shall we tell them together? I think that would be best, agreed David. That way they can support each other during the revelation. They scheduled a meeting for the following Sunday at the Harrison house. This time, it would be a full conversation between the two families, including the girls. During the week, Catherine and David exhaustively debated how to approach the subject with Emily. Finally, on Friday night, they decided to lay the groundwork. Emily, can you sit with us in the living room? We need to talk about something important. The girl looked worried. Did I do something wrong? No, sweetheart, it's nothing you did. It's about our family and some discoveries we've made recently. Emily sat on the sofa between her parents, clearly apprehensive. Remember how you've always commented that you feel like you're different from us? Began Catherine carefully. Yes. Well, we recently discovered there might be an explanation for those feelings. David took over the conversation. We found some old documents that suggest there may have been a mistake at the hospital when you were born. What kind of mistake? Catherine took a deep breath. It's possible you were accidentally switched with another baby. Emily was silent for several minutes, processing the information. Catherine and David waited anxiously for her reaction. That explains a lot, Emily said finally, to her parents' surprise. You're not upset. I'm confused, and a little relieved, actually. I always knew there was something different about me. Emily looked at her parents. But you're still my parents. This doesn't change anything between us, right? Catherine hugged her daughter, crying with relief. Of course it doesn't change anything. You are our daughter. You always will be. And the other family, it's Olivia's family, isn't it? David nodded. How did you know? It wasn't hard to imagine. The way you introduced us, how everyone behaved last week, and besides... Emily hesitated. What, dear? I feel more connected to Olivia's parents than I expected, and I'm sure she feels the same way about you. Are you okay with that? Asked Catherine. I think so. Actually, I'm curious. I want to know more about my biological family. Tomorrow we're going to meet with them to talk about all of this, all together. Do they already know? Yes, they always suspected, just like we did. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Does that mean Olivia is your biological daughter? We believe so. That's strange, but it also makes sense. You two connected with her very quickly. On Sunday, the two families gathered again at the Harrison house. This time the mood was more serious, but there was also a feeling of relief in the air, as if a weight everyone had carried for years was finally being lifted. Michael began the conversation by explaining to Olivia the suspicions he and Jennifer had always had. To everyone's surprise, Olivia didn't seem shocked. I kind of already imagined something like this could have happened, she said. I never felt like I completely belonged to our family. I love you, but I always knew I was different. Emily took Olivia's hand. I've felt the same way my whole life. And now? Asked Jennifer. How do you want to handle this situation? The two girls looked at each other and seemed to communicate silently. Can we keep being friends and spend time with both families? Asked Olivia. We don't want anything to change drastically, added Emily. You are our parents, regardless of biology, but we would also like to get to know our biological families better. Catherine felt relieved beyond words. So, you don't want to switch families? No, the two girls answered simultaneously. We just want to expand our families, explained Emily, to have more people to love and who love us. Michael smiled for the first time in weeks. That sounds like a perfect solution for everyone. But we still need official confirmation, right? Asked Jennifer. DNA tests to be absolutely sure? David nodded. I think it would be important for all of us to know for certain. And if the tests confirm our suspicion, how will we explain it to other people? Friends, School? Extended family? Catherine thought for a moment. I think we can simply say we discovered we're connected families and decided to become closer. We don't need to give details to anyone not directly involved in the situation. In the following weeks, the two families arranged for DNA tests discreetly through a private lab. While waiting for the results, they continued to meet regularly, allowing the girls and the adults to develop deeper relationships. Jessica watched the whole process with admiration. The maturity and wisdom shown by everyone involved was impressive. Instead of a traumatic and destructive situation, the discovery was turning into an opportunity for growth and family connection. When the test results arrived 2 weeks later, they confirmed what everyone already knew in their hearts. Emily was the biological daughter of Michael and Jennifer Harrison, and Olivia was the biological daughter of Catherine and David Thornton. The meeting to discuss the results was emotionally intense, but also liberating. Finally, everyone had the scientific confirmation of what their instincts had already suggested. "How do you feel now that we know for sure?" asked Michael. "Relieved," answered David honestly. "For years we carried the doubt and the guilt. At least now we know the truth." "And what about you girls?" asked Jennifer. Emily and Olivia had spent a long time talking between themselves about the situation. "We're okay," said Emily. "Actually, we're excited to explore these new family connections. Do you want us to tell other people in the family? Grandparents, aunts and uncles?" "Eventually, yes," replied Olivia, "but we can do it gradually, as we feel comfortable." During the following months, the two families created a unique and special dynamic. Emily began dividing her time between the two homes, developing a close relationship with Michael and Jennifer, while maintaining her strong bond with Catherine and David. Olivia did the same with her biological and adoptive families. The most remarkable thing was to observe how the girls flourished upon finding their biological connections. Emily discovered she inherited her love for literature and classical music from Michael, while developing a deep emotional connection with Jennifer, who shared her artistic sensitivity and natural introversion. Olivia, in turn, found in Catherine the source of her energy and adventurous spirit, and in David a role model for her passion for sports and outdoor activities. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. But the adaptation was not without challenges. There were moments of emotional confusion, especially when the girls tried to navigate their loyalties to both families. Sometimes Emily felt guilty for enjoying the company of Michael and Jennifer so much, as if she were betraying Catherine and David. Olivia went through the same internal conflict. It was Jessica who suggested the families seek help from a therapist specializing in complex family situations. Dr. Rachel Cooper had experience with adoption cases and family identity issues. During the family therapy sessions, which included all 6 people, Dr. Rachel helped each member process their emotions and establish healthy boundaries for the new family dynamic. "It's natural for you to feel confusion and loyalty conflicts," explained the therapist during one session. "You are redefining the traditional concept of family and creating something unique." "Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying my parents when I spend time with Olivia's parents," admitted Emily. "And I feel the same way," added Olivia. Dr. Rachel smiled understandingly. "You are not betraying anyone. Love is not a limited resource. You can love multiple people without diminishing the love you feel for others." Catherine spoke up. "As parents, we also struggle with feelings of jealousy sometimes. It's hard to see Emily connecting so naturally with Michael and Jennifer." "That is completely normal and understandable," assured the therapist. "The important thing is to communicate these feelings openly and work together to create an environment where everyone feels valued and safe." The therapy sessions proved extremely valuable for all the families. They learned to communicate their needs, establish traditions that honored both the biological and adoptive families, and create an emotional support system that benefited everyone. One of the most special traditions they developed were the monthly dinners where the two families would gather to cook together and share stories. These gatherings became precious moments of connection and building shared memories. Jessica continued to be an important presence in everyone's life. Catherine and David promoted her from housekeeper to household coordinator, recognizing that she had been instrumental in the discovery that changed their lives for the better. "Jessica, we don't know how to thank you," said Catherine during one of the family dinners. "If you hadn't had the courage to investigate those documents, we might never have discovered the truth." "I just did what I thought was right," Jessica replied modestly. "All of you had the true courage to face the truth and create something beautiful with it." As the months passed, the girls began to naturally refer to the four adults as their parents. They developed special nicknames to distinguish them. Catherine and David became Mom Kathy and Dad Dave, while Michael and Jennifer became Father Michael and Mother Jen. The school was initially confused by the situation when both girls listed four parents on their emergency forms, but after a careful explanation by Dr. Rachel, the school administration accepted the unusual arrangement. One of the most touching moments came when the girls turned 16. The two families organized a joint party where they celebrated not only the birthdays but also the first year since the discovery of the truth. During the party, Emily gave a speech that moved everyone. "A year ago, I felt lost, as if I didn't quite know who I was or where I belonged. Today I know I belong to two amazing families who love me for who I am. I didn't lose anything when we discovered the truth. I gained more love, more support, and a sister in Olivia." Olivia added, "And I discovered it's possible to have four parents who love me in different, but equally special ways. Our family might not be traditional, but it's perfect for us." In the months that followed, other extended family members were gradually informed about the situation. Surprisingly, most reacted with support and acceptance. The grandparents on both sides, after the initial shock, embraced the opportunity to have extra granddaughters to love. The only resistance came from some more conservative relatives who didn't understand how the situation could work. But the families decided they wouldn't allow negative opinions from peripheral people to affect their happiness. Dr. Rachel continued to follow up with the families in monthly sessions, helping them navigate the unique challenges of their situation. One of the biggest challenges arose when the girls began to think about college and the future. "How will we decide practical matters like where to study, which surname to use on official documents, inheritance issues?" asked David during a session. "These are decisions you'll have to make together, always prioritizing the girls' well-being and wishes," advised Dr. Rachel. Emily and Olivia spent hours discussing these issues between themselves. Finally, they reached some decisions. They would keep the surnames they grew up with to avoid unnecessary legal complications, but would add their biological surnames as middle names on unofficial documents. As for college, they decided they would choose universities based on their academic interests and opportunities, not on geographical proximity to one family or the other. Regarding inheritance, the four parents reached an agreement that they would treat both girls equally, regardless of biological relation. They created a joint fund for both girls' college education and planned to leave their estates to both girls equally. 2 years after the initial discovery, the families had found a balance that worked for everyone. The girls flourished in their welcoming and expanded environments, developing confidence and solid identities. Emily excelled academically and developed a special talent for writing, something she inherited from Michael, who was a journalist. She began contributing to the student newspaper and planned to study literature or journalism in college. Olivia became a standout athlete in extreme sports, something Catherine had practiced in her youth before settling into a more conservative career. She won several mountain biking competitions and planned to study physical education or sports management. Most importantly, both girls maintained strong, healthy relationships with all four parents. They learned to value the unique contributions each adult brought to their lives, without feeling they had to choose sides or diminish one relationship to strengthen another. Jessica continued to be a central figure in everyone's life. She became like an aunt to the girls and a close friend to the adults. Her practical wisdom and outside perspective often helped resolve small conflicts before they became bigger problems. Mrs. Margaret also became an honorary grandmother to the girls, sharing her experience and offering advice when needed. Her home became a neutral territory where the families could gather without the pressure of being on one family's or the other's turf. As the girls neared high school graduation, they began to reflect on how their unique experience shaped their perspectives on family, love, and relationships. "I think we're very lucky," said Olivia during an intimate conversation with Emily. "We learned that family is about love and choice, not just biology." "It's true," Emily agreed, "and we learned it's possible to love several people deeply without dividing or diminishing that love." The lessons the girls learned about family and love extended to other aspects of their lives. They became exceptionally empathetic and mature young women, capable of seeing complex situations from multiple perspectives. Their school peers often sought them out for advice on family matters, knowing they had a unique understanding of complicated family dynamics. During her senior year of high school, Emily wrote an essay about her experience for a national writing competition. The essay, titled "Discovering that Family is a Verb, Not a Noun," won first place and attracted local media attention. Several families in similar situations contacted the Thornton and Harrison families after reading about their story. Catherine, David, Michael, and Jennifer became informal advocates for families navigating complex identity and kinship issues. They created a monthly support group where families in similar situations could gather to share experiences and coping strategies. Dr. Rachel facilitated these meetings, providing professional guidance when needed. The group grew beyond expectations, eventually becoming a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting families dealing with identity issues, late adoption, and complex kinship situations. Jessica became the administrative coordinator of the organization, applying her organizational skills and her unique perspective to help other families. Her transformation from a house cleaner to a community leader inspired many people facing their own life transitions. When graduation time came, the families organized a joint celebration that exemplified everything they had built together. The party included not only friends and extended family, but also Dr. Rachel, Mrs. Margaret, and several families from the support group who had become part of their expanded community. During the graduation ceremony, when the girls' names were called, 4 parents proudly stood up to applaud each of them. Some onlookers were initially confused, but those who knew the story smiled at the obvious love and support surrounding the 2 young women. In their graduation speeches, both Emily and Olivia spoke of the lessons they had learned about love, family, and the importance of facing difficult truths. Their words resonated not only with their families, but with the entire audience. 3 years ago, I thought I knew what family was, said Emily in her speech as class valedictorian. Today I know family is far more complex and beautiful than I ever imagined. It's about the people who choose to love and support you, no matter how you came into their lives. Olivia, in her role as Student Council President, added, "We learned that the truth, even when it's scary or complicated, almost always leads to something better than living in uncertainty. And we learned that love multiplies when it's shared. It doesn't divide." After graduation, the girls spent the summer splitting their time between the 2 families and volunteering at the organization their parents had created. They helped facilitate support groups for teenagers dealing with family identity issues, sharing their experiences and offering peer perspective. When it came time to choose colleges, the girls made decisions that surprised some but made perfect sense to their families. Emily chose a university about 2 hours away, close enough to visit regularly but far enough to develop independence. Olivia decided to take a gap year to travel and do volunteer work before starting college. She wanted to explore the world and gain perspective before committing to a specific academic path. Both decisions were unanimously supported by all 4 parents, who had learned to value the girls' autonomy and personal growth above their own preferences or fears. The farewell when Emily left for university was emotionally intense, but also celebratory. Both families accompanied her to help her settle into the dorm, creating an unusual entourage that drew curious looks, but also understanding smiles from other parents. During her first semester at university, Emily would often video call both families to share her experiences. She excelled academically and socially, and her roommates were fascinated by her unique family story. Olivia, meanwhile, traveled through Latin America doing volunteer work with organizations supporting orphaned children and displaced families. Her experience with complex family issues made her particularly effective in helping children facing uncertainties about their identity and belonging. During her travels, Olivia kept in regular contact with both families, sharing her adventures and insights through a blog that gained followers worldwide. The first Christmas after the girls' departure was bittersweet for the families. They missed the girls' energy and presence, but were also proud to see how they were flourishing in their new environments. Emily returned home with stories about how her unique family experience had influenced her choice to major in sociology with a focus on non-traditional family structures. She planned to write her undergraduate thesis on families created by unique circumstances. Olivia returned from her travels with an expanded perspective on family and community. She had seen how different cultures approach kinship and belonging, and it reinforced her appreciation for what her families had created. During the holiday break, the girls helped organize the first annual conference for the family support organization their parents had created. The conference attracted families from across the country facing similar situations. The event was a resounding success, with workshops on family communication, legal resources, psychological support, and community building. Emily and Olivia led a panel for teenagers on navigating identity issues within complex families. The family's story gained national attention when an independent documentary filmmaker requested permission to film their journey. After much discussion, they agreed to participate, seeing it as an opportunity to educate and inspire other families in similar situations. The documentary, titled Finding Family: A Story of Love, Loss and Discovery, premiered at independent film festivals and was eventually purchased by a major streaming platform. The response to the documentary was overwhelmingly positive. Thousands of families reached out to share their own stories and seek support. The organization they had created grew exponentially, opening branches in several cities. Jessica became the public face of the organization, often giving talks about the importance of following one's conscience and fighting for the truth even when it's frightening. Her personal transformation inspired many people to make positive changes in their own lives. As the young women progressed in their university studies and exploration of the world, their families continued to evolve and grow. Catherine and Michael began collaborating on work projects, discovering that their skills complemented each other well. Jennifer and David developed a friendship based on their shared passion for photography. The four parents became a true team, supporting each other through professional and personal challenges. When Michael faced health issues, Catherine, Jennifer, and David rallied to support the family. When Catherine went through a difficult phase at work, the Harrisons returned the support. Dr. Rachel continued to follow the family, but the sessions became less about conflict resolution and more about celebrating growth and planning for the future. She often used their story as an example in her professional conferences on innovative family therapy. Mrs. Margaret, now in her 70s, became the honorary matriarch of the expanded family. Her home continued to be the site of neutral gatherings, and her practical wisdom was valued by all. She often joked that she had gained 4 granddaughters instead of 1 when Jessica brought the discovery of the documents home. When Emily graduated from university with honors in sociology, her thesis on non-traditional families was published in a respected academic journal. She decided to continue her studies in a master's program, specifically focusing on public policies that support diverse family structures. Olivia, after her gap year, entered university with a major in social work and community development. Her travel experiences and unique family background motivated her to work with families facing transitions and crises. The relationship between the two young women had evolved from a close friendship into a connection that transcended traditional definitions. They considered themselves sisters, best friends, and life partners in every important sense. During their final university year, they collaborated on a research project about the impact of late discovery kinship on identity and psychological well-being. Their work was presented at national conferences and contributed to the emerging academic literature on the subject. When it came time to plan their post-university careers, the young women made a decision that moved their families. They chose to work together, expanding the family organization they had helped create. Emily would use her research and policy skills to develop evidence-based support programs. Olivia would apply her social work experience to implement these programs directly with families in need. The decision to work together was not made lightly. They spent months discussing how to balance their professional partnership with their personal needs for autonomy and individual growth. With guidance from Dr. Rachel and the support of their families, they created a business plan that allowed for close collaboration while maintaining separate spaces for personal and professional development. The organization, now officially named United Families Support Center for Diverse Family Structures, opened its national headquarters in the city where it all began. The building included administrative offices, family therapy rooms, spaces for educational workshops, and a resource center with a specialized library. Jessica became the executive director, overseeing daily operations and coordinating between the various branches that had emerged in different cities. Her personal story, from domestic cleaner to leader of a national organization, became a powerful symbol of how following one's conscience can lead to unimaginable transformations. Catherine and David contributed to the organization through their professional expertise, Catherine in corporate finance and David in project management. Michael used his journalistic skills to manage communications and public awareness, while Jennifer, with her background in psychology, helped develop therapeutic programs. Dr. Rachel became the clinical director of the organization, supervising a team of therapists specializing in complex family issues. Her research on the Thornton-Harrison family had contributed significantly to new therapeutic approaches for similar situations. Mrs. Margaret, even retired, volunteered as a senior counselor, offering life perspective and practical wisdom to families facing difficult transitions. Her warm, non-judgmental presence made her a beloved figure among the organization's clients. 5 years after the initial discovery of the documents in the trash, the organization had helped over 1,000 families navigate complex issues of identity, kinship, and family transitions. Their work caught the attention of policymakers and academic researchers. Emily was invited to testify before legislative committees about the need for reforms in adoption and kinship laws. Her work contributed to changes in regulations that made it easier for families in non-traditional situations to navigate legal matters. Olivia developed innovative peer-to-peer support programs that connected young people in similar family situations. These programs proved extraordinarily effective in helping teenagers process issues of identity and belonging. The impact of their work extended beyond their organization. Other entities began to adopt their approaches, and schools of social work introduced courses based on their methodologies. During a national conference on contemporary families, Emily was asked what advice she would give to families facing revelations similar to hers. The most important thing is to remember that discovering the truth about your family history doesn't erase the love and connections you've already built, she replied. Family isn't a fixed or limited category. It can grow and evolve in ways we never imagined. Olivia added, and for young people going through this, it's normal to feel confused, scared, or even relieved. All those feelings are valid. What's important is to be patient with the process and communicate openly with the people who love you. When asked about regrets or negative aspects of their experience, both were quick to respond that they wouldn't change a thing. Of course, there were difficult and confusing moments, admitted Emily, but every family faces challenges. Ours were just a little different from the traditional ones. And look at all you've gained from this experience, added Olivia, gesturing to the conference full of families who had been helped by their work. If we hadn't gone through that, we never would have discovered our purpose or helped so many people. The family's story gained international recognition when they were invited to speak at the World Conference on Contemporary Family Structures in Geneva. Their presentation on redefining family through discovery and acceptance received a standing ovation and influenced family policies in several countries. During the trip, the two families had time to reflect on the extraordinary journey they had shared. Sitting in a Swiss cafe, watching Emily and Olivia prepare their presentation, the four parents talked about how their lives had changed. Sometimes I can't believe it all started with Jessica finding papers in the trash, said Catherine. It was the best mistake we could have discovered, agreed Jennifer. Look at what we've built together. Michael reflected. I think the most important lesson we learned is that true love isn't afraid of the truth. In fact, it thrives on transparency and honesty. And that family isn't about perfection or conforming to social expectations, added David. It's about creating spaces where people can be authentic and feel loved unconditionally. Back in Brazil, the organization continued to grow and evolve. They established partnerships with universities for ongoing research, worked with hospitals to prevent future baby swaps through better protocols, and collaborated with schools to create more inclusive environments for children from non-traditional families. Jessica often reflected on how her decision to investigate those seemingly insignificant documents had created ripples of change that extended far beyond her own life or even the Thornton Harrison family. "Sometimes courage is simply doing the right thing when it appears in front of you," she would often say in her talks. "It doesn't have to be heroic or dramatic. Sometimes it's just choosing truth over comfortable silence." Her own life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. From a working woman struggling to support her elderly mother, she had become a respected leader, sought-after speaker, and advocate for families across the country. Mrs. Margaret, now over 75 but still sharp-minded, often joked that her daughter had found her true calling through a torn trash bag. "God works in mysterious ways," she would say, laughing. Who would have thought one person's trash could become so many families' treasure? When Emily and Olivia turned 25, the families organized a celebration that also served as a milestone to reflect on a decade since the initial discovery. The party brought together hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by their story and work. During the celebration, each member of the extended family had the opportunity to share how the experience had impacted their own life and perspective. Catherine spoke about how learning to love without possessiveness had transformed all her relationships, not just the familial ones. David shared how witnessing his family's courage in facing difficult truths inspired him to be more honest and vulnerable in all areas of his life. Michael reflected on how discovering his biological daughters had taught him that true kinship is about presence and participation, not just genetics. Jennifer spoke about how seeing her daughters thrive in expanded families confirmed her belief that multiplied love is always better than restricted love. Dr. Rachel, now a nationally recognized researcher in contemporary family structures, presented data on how the Thornton Harrison family model had influenced therapeutic approaches and family policies across the country. Jessica, moved, spoke about how finding those documents not only changed the lives of two families, but had taught her that every person has the power to be a catalyst for positive change when they choose to act with courage and integrity. Mrs. Margaret, as the respected matriarch of the group, offered the final words of the evening. "Sometimes we think we know how our story should be written, but life has its own ideas about what's best for us. The important thing is to keep our hearts open to the surprises fate may bring." Emily and Olivia, now confident and accomplished young women, looked around the room full of people whose lives had been enriched by their unique family journey. They felt profoundly grateful not only for the abundant love they received from their expanded families, but for the opportunity to transform their personal experience into a force for good in the world. "When we were teenagers discovering the truth about our origins, we never imagined it would lead to something so big," said Emily to the audience. "We thought we were just trying to understand our own situation." Olivia added, "But we learned that our personal stories are connected to so many other people's. When we have the courage to face our own truth, sometimes we end up helping others face theirs too." The organization that had been born from an accidental discovery in the trash now operated in 15 cities, had helped thousands of families, influenced public policy, and created new models for family support in complex situations. More important than the numbers, however, was the legacy of love, acceptance, and courage that the story had created. Families across the country now knew it was possible to navigate difficult revelations with grace, that non-traditional family structures could be as solid as conventional ones, and that truth, while sometimes frightening, almost always led to something better than uncertainty. The story that began with a conscientious cleaner finding discarded documents had transformed into a family transformation movement that would continue to impact future generations. And at the heart of it all, 4 parents who chose love over fear, Two daughters who grew up knowing they belonged to something bigger than traditional family boundaries, and a brave woman who proved that following your conscience can change not only your own life, but the world around you. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story and where you're watching from. If you have any similar experience or reflection to share with us, leave it in the comments with your sincere words. Do you believe Jessica made the right decision by investigating the documents? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories.